ladies and gents, welcome to the MKL Pugilism Boxing channel, where we talk all things boxing. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification, put it on all so you can get notified the very second we drop any new content on this channel. You will be the first to be hit up and know about it. So let's get into it. So this weekend's action, a few days ago now, Saturday night for the Americans, Sunday morning for the Brits. Over here we had Devin "The Dream" Haney taking a big step up in competition against Jorge Linares. Going into this fight, I would say this was definitely Devin Haney's biggest test to date. Jorge Linares, I'd say by far and away sort of the best opponent that he's fought, both in terms of name and in terms of ability. And yeah, definitely this was a step up. Some of the alpha guys that in and around lightweight, they've had their tests. Garcia with Campbell, Teofimo Lopez with Vasyl Lomachenko, and yeah, so this was time to step up for Devin Haney. As this fight started, Devin Haney, I would say, started this fight off right. He established a nice jab, a stiff jab. His jab was definitely authoritative, as I like to say. It was nice, stiff, boom, and he established that nice jab to the head, worked his way down, used the jab to the body, and he when he threw this jab, it was a hard jab. Definitely was a hard jab. It was a jab with some authority, some sting in it. So for that first portion of the fight, he really sort of had Linares at arm's length, and he was able to keep Linares from really being able to do very much in the early rounds. Linares was sort of coming in, trying to come in at least behind a high guard, coming in hands up and trying to sort of put the pressure on Devin Haney. But although Haney fought sort of so I would say mid-range, but although he was relatively close to Linares, he was always sort of slipping and sliding. So he used some good upper body movement early on in this fight, where he was able to land jabs. Sometimes he, 2 or 3 jabs, body and head, mixed it up a little bit. But he was always sort of able to evade the majority of what Linares was doing. Linares was kind of waiting to capitalize on whatever mistakes Haney was making early in this fight. But for the most part, it was just Haney pretty much having his own way. He was under a bit of pressure, so but he seemed relatively comfortable under the pressure. Linares was coming through, but in those early rounds, I'd say for at least, let's say, 2/3 of this fight, from round 1 through to about round 8, it was pretty much one-sided, for me at least, on Devin Haney's part. He was pretty much sort of having his own way for the first 8 rounds. There were moments where he did take shots. This performance by him was by no means like a perfect performance where he didn't put a foot wrong. Watching this fight on for the second time showed me a lot more than sort of watching it live. As Haney, he did box well early, but he was taking a few shots here and there. It was like he was having it mostly his own way, and he was landing most of the meaningful punches throughout a lot of the fight. But he was taking shots here and there. He was being caught here and there, and I think that's where people are coming from when, I've heard a lot of channels talking about, well, there was a lot of gaps in his game, a lot of holes in his game, and I think that's what they're talking about there, where he was good, he was elusive. He had some Floyd Mayweather moves of hitting, holding sometimes, being elusive, using a little shoulder roll. So he did show some good moves in there, but yeah, there were times at which he got hit with little shots he shouldn't have got hit with. But for me, the majority of this fight, I'd say going into even round sort of 8 and onwards, he was definitely in a very big lead, a wide lead on my card, because it was just a case of, yep, Linares was there, he was doing his thing, but he really wasn't able to establish himself. He wasn't really able to sort of get a rhythm going and get many punches off, because Haney was sort of working in bursts and working so well off the jab that Linares, as he tried to come into attack, he'd always get hit with something, normally a jab. And Haney, although it wasn't perfect the way he delivered his shots, some of them did miss and that, but overall, his work, was much more fluid and much more effective, and he was getting his shots off, whereas Jorge Linares wasn't really able to get much off. He was always there, he was always sort of in the fight, but he was losing the fight quite widely for me going into sort of 9 and onwards. And one of the key big moments in this fight was, I believe, round 10, where Linares finally he was able to rattle off a few combinations on Devin Haney. Devin Haney took him, and there was a point that it really got him with a good solid right hand, and that was probably the biggest moment in this fight. It got him with a good solid right hand. Devin Haney kind of smiled, but he was definitely physically wobbled, and he was very fortunate because that punch that really wobbled him, that they repeated it on the zone many times, that punch really wobbled him, but it was right at the end of the round. So although he got wobbled and you could see it, he was shaken, he was bothered, it was right at the end of the round, so he could go back to the corner right on the bell, and it goes back to the corner, seems to be okay, but even you could see that he was kind of shaken when we were in sort of round 11 as well. And it was a case of Linares was able to land a few shots, but Haney, to his credit, although he got hurt there, he basically was still able to for certain parts of the round at least, be able to sort of outbox Linares. I felt like he still was taking the round, and sort of apart from that moment in round 10 and going sort of round 11, Haney was still, although he was shaky, although he was definitely looking shaky, he was still sort of the man that was running things in the ring. He was still the man that was sort of had set the pace, and he was still boxing at his pace, although he was hurt. And for me, he still kind of took that round. And then again, championship round 12 comes. It was a case of Haney really, he'd done enough, although it wasn't perfect. He'd done enough to just be able to sort of stay on his feet in that 12th round, and he'd win the fight. And that's exactly what he done. For some portion of these championship rounds, he was in a bit of a survival mode. He wasn't doing too much attacking, but I felt he was doing just enough to just nick the rounds, just to win the round. So yeah, it was a very, in the end, of course, Haney wins this unanimously, no question about that on the judges' scorecards. And it's a good comprehensive win for Devin Haney. He was shaken up in this fight. He was hurt in this fight. In a sense, I don't think this performance by Devin Haney is really going to strike fear into the hearts of Lopez or anyone at lightweight, even Ryan Garcia or whoever. Overall, decent performance by him. It's, somewhat acceptable, not the greatest, but it was decent enough. I'd say he was able to sort of have his own way throughout most of this fight, which going against someone like Linares is quite impressive. Have your own way throughout the whole fight. He got hurt, but he got over it and recovered, and he won the fight. The main thing for Haney at this stage is he won the fight. And after the fight, there were a few sort of post-fight interviews. He seems to be very keen on the idea of fighting Teofimo Lopez. It's one of those where on that performance, of course, pending, we'll see what Lopez does with Kambosos, but if Lopez looks good against Kambosos, I think based on his Lomachenko performance and whatever he does with Kambosos, if he does good there, I think you'd have to sort of favor Teofimo Lopez over Haney. But at the same time, if Haney raises his game, if he goes back to just boxing, sticking and moving, doing what he's quite strong at, then he will give a lot of problems to these guys. It's one of them where in this lightweight division, what we need to do is we need to see them fight really. So yeah, it talked a bit about Lopez. You know, he's up for the big fight. So, you know, hopefully we'll see these fights happen, and we'll see him clash, and we'll get to establish who really is the best. Because right now they say the four kings: Davis, Lopez, Garcia, and Haney. But as I said in my other video about these four so-called four kings, none of them have fought each other yet, and in order to even call them kings or any, they really do need to fight each other so we can really see who's the real king and who's a pretender. So yeah, congrats to Devin Haney. Good result for him. Not the best of performances, but very at the same time comprehensive victory. Well done to him, and yeah, I look forward to seeing what happens next in his career. So until next time, this is MKO Pugilism over and out, and I'll catch you on the next one.